Hi, it's Katrina.
Number 10. Arthur's Stone. King Arthur, the famous ruler who defended Britain and fought the Saxons, may or may not have existed. Legend has it he ruled from the Round Table at Camelot. He was friends with the wizard Merlin, and his sister lived on a mythical island called Avalon. A lot of pieces of Arthur's story seem overly fictitious, although the ruler himself may have been a real king. Historians and scholars are torn on the subject, and nobody's been able to prove or disprove King Arthur's existence. Archaeologists in England recently excavated an ancient Neolithic chambered tomb called Arthur's Stone. The tomb couldn't have possibly been used by Arthur, seeing as he would have lived in the 12th century, but there have been stories over the years that connect the ruler to the tomb. One of the most notable stories is that King Arthur fought a giant who fell backward onto the tomb and snapped the capstone in half. Another legend is that the 2 indentations on the capstone were left from Arthur when he knelt and prayed for help in defending Britain. Whether King Arthur really had anything to do with this tomb, nobody can say for certain. What we do know is that the tomb is extremely mysterious, even without King Arthur's name attached to it. It was most likely used as a resting location for remains 5,000 years ago. The bodies of the dead would be left to decay in the bottom chamber and only cleared away once the flesh had rotted off the bones. Number 9. The Temples of Malden Island. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, about 1,500 miles from Hawaii, there is the Republic of Kiribati. The republic consists of 32 atolls, one of them being Malden Island, arguably the most mysterious. The island is small, a sanctuary for seabirds, and it's considered one of the most desolate and isolated places in the entire world. And yet there is also evidence here of a lost civilization. There are ancient temples on Malden Island, but no one knows who built them. At some point in the last couple thousand years, an unknown group of people arrived on the island and settled on it. They built huge stone structures, a lot of them, and held out against the elements as long as they could. They then vanished without leaving any mention of who they were behind. Scientists are still stumped as to where they came from, how long they even lived on the island, and where they went after. For such a tiny island, it is filled with temples. There are about 40 stone temples spread across the island, and they seem to be Polynesian. However, that kind of depends on which experts you ask. Some say Polynesian, others say Melanesian. Some have even suggested that the people of Malden Island traveled from Nad Madol in Micronesia 3,400 miles away, although there is no reason as to why. The population here may not have been overly large. As few as 100 people could have crossed the ocean in small boats and built the stone temples. If anything, there may have been a maximum of around 200 humans living on the island. What in the world they needed 40 temples for, or why they created stone-paved roads leading to the sea, it's all a total mystery. Number 8. The Moai Symbols. An excavation of Easter Island in 2012 revealed something that shocked the world. The giant Moai statues of Easter Island are covered in tattoos. It was a big enough shock when we learned that the heads were attached to bodies buried underground. But now it turns out their bodies are covered in strange and mysterious symbols. Researchers discovered designs etched onto the Moai statues that almost look like tribal tattoos. There are whorls and crescents, large circles, and other geometric shapes that appear to represent something important. Some think the crescent shapes may have been meant to depict canoes, which the local Polynesians used extensively to get around the ocean. But whatever the rest of the symbols mean is still an unsolved mystery. In fact, the statues themselves are still an enigma. All we know is that the people of Easter Island, also called the Rapa Nui, showed up many centuries ago and built 887 huge stone statues. But we still don't know how the Moai were built, why they were buried up to their necks, or why they were decorated with heavy red hats. Number 7. Unexplained Remains. Archaeologists in Haverfordwest began excavations at a medieval friary with no specific expectations in mind other than to learn more about the place. What they hadn't expected was to immediately uncover human bones. They dug up 100 skeletons near the foundation of the medieval structure, which was uncovered underneath a demolished mall complex. But they say there could be as many as 300 skeletons that they haven't unearthed yet. Even stranger, about a third of these skeletons belong to children under the age of 4. Researchers aren't entirely sure what they've stumbled upon. It's believed the ruins discovered under the bulldozed mall are from the Friary of St. Saviour's from the 13th century. It functioned up until the 1530s and then was shut down for unknown reasons. The Dominican Order of Black Friars had operated out of the friary for 300 years, and then they were gone. What everyone really wants to know is why there are an estimated 100 children's skeletons buried here. Were the friars secretly part of some child-murdering cult? Did the bodies come from an epidemic that swept through the region? There are a lot of questions, and right now, no one has the answers. Number 6. The Eye of the Sahara. There is a theory out there which claims the lost city of Atlantis is hiding in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Specifically, the city of Atlantis has been connected to something called the Eye of the Sahara, or the Richat structure. Officially, the Eye of the Sahara is a natural phenomenon on the Adrar Plateau. It's a symmetrical geological feature formed over millions of years to create a pattern of concentric circles exposed in the sedimentary rock. It was first seen by astronauts in the 1960s, and scientists speculated it was a crater left over by some kind of extraterrestrial impact. These days, scientists agree it's nothing more than a geological wonder, something totally unique on this planet. But there are others who believe the Eye of the Sahara is in fact the lost city of Atlantis. Their evidence is scant, but plausible enough that it makes a convincing argument. For example, there are huge white spots visible on the Eye of the Sahara that are from salt deposits on the surface. This indicates that there could have been a body of water covering the structure 12,000 years ago. That was right around the time that the Sahara Desert was a jungle, lush and green, before a massive flood washed away the vegetation. Then, by the time the water from the flood receded and the land was dry again, it had turned into a desert. The theory is that before the flood, the Eye of the Sahara was the center of the city of Atlantis. The flood washed the city away, and for an unknown reason left an eye-shaped indent in the sediment. What do you think? Could this have been Atlantis? Let me know in the comments below. Number 5. Bodies in the well. In Norwich, England, construction workers broke ground on a shopping mall in 2004. Not long after construction began, the workers uncovered a well from 800 years ago. It was a pretty interesting discovery on its own, until they dug even deeper and found 17 bodies at the bottom of the well. The identities of these 17 people have proven to be a bigger mystery than anyone could have anticipated. There were 6 adults and 11 children, but nobody can figure out how they wound up in a well from the medieval period. This wasn't a mass burial, at least it wasn't like most mass burials in the 12th century. There appears to have been some kind of massacre. The positions of the bodies in the well suggest they were thrown into the pit head first, just after their deaths. Researchers did DNA sequencing and found that many of the victims were related, including a trio of sisters. The 12th century in England was not a good time to be a person of the Jewish faith. There was major anti-Semitic violence near the end of the 1100s in response to the Third Crusade. Selina Brace from the Natural History Museum in London believes the people in the well were murdered, most likely due to a violent anti-Semitic attack on the city in February of 1190. Medieval chroniclers detailed a series of such attacks supported by the church. Number 4. The Dispilio Tablet. The Dispilio tablet was found in northern Greece by a professor, an expert in prehistoric archaeology. He came across the tablet in 1993 while excavating an ancient human settlement in Macedonia. This mysterious settlement was occupied just over 7,000 years ago by an unnamed tribe of primitive early humans. What makes the tablet so amazing is that it was found with a system of writing on it. This is a serious conundrum because according to mainstream archaeology, writing was first invented 6,000 years ago in Sumer, Mesopotamia. What this artifact seems to represent is the first written language 1,000 years before the first written language. The text is a jumble of symbols that nobody's been able to decipher, and unfortunately, the text won't be deciphered unless a new Rosetta Stone is found that can give scientists a clue as to what the symbols on the tablet mean. To make things even more interesting, it was found at the bottom of a lake. The ancient settlement was flooded a long time ago, leaving artifacts from the early culture scattered across the bottom of the new body of water. But as soon as archaeologists removed the tablet, its contact with oxygen made it start to deteriorate. This is one of those discoveries that could change the history books. The reason is that the Sumerians are generally credited with creating the first writing system. But this tablet shows it happened before the Sumerians in approximately 5260 BC and was done by a group of humans living in the homeland of Alexander the Great. Number 3. The Starving of Sahara. No one is entirely sure where the Starving of Sahara came from. This is the name for a statue which depicts a pair of limestone figures from ancient Egypt that are about as bizarre as it gets. They have elongated skulls like aliens, slack jaws and open mouths, and are squatting naked opposite one another in a very peculiar position. Researchers have identified traces of red pigment on the statue and even streaks of green paint. The weirdest piece of the mystery is that at the base of the statue is an inscription in a language that has never been deciphered. This thing is an absolute mystery, one that has been terrorizing scientists for decades. It's currently housed at the University of Concordia, Montreal, Canada. They acquired the Starving of Sahara in 1999, but nobody knows where it all started, who initially found it, or where they found it. The statue just kind of showed up on the archaeological scene, supposedly taken from Saqqara in Egypt. Nobody has ever been able to make sense of these figures. The statue has been inspected by the top researchers from the British Museum, the Brooklyn Museum, and even the Israel Museum. There hasn't been any success in identifying the figures, dating the statue, or deciphering the inscription. Number 2. Mysterious Scotland. There are hundreds of ancient stone structures standing menacingly across the Scottish Highlands. These things are called Brochs, and the experts are not entirely clear on what they were used for. The Brochs can be found all throughout the misty mountains of the Highlands, through the moorlands, and down into the deep green glens of Scotland's mystical northern countryside. They appear to be crumbling stone towers, but they don't seem to serve any purpose. They began to emerge 2,000 years ago, likely built by local tribes during the days of the Roman occupation to the south. The Scottish tribes erected roughly 500 Brochs, each one with walls nearly 15 feet thick and 40 feet tall. When archaeologists first started taking interest in the stone towers, they assumed that they had been parts of fortresses. But as more and more excavations were done, it became clear the Brochs were standalone structures. They are huge towers stretching up to the sky and totally hollow inside, not part of any larger settlement or fort. Each one was like a huge chimney in the middle of nowhere, but why the Scots built them, nobody knows. Number 1. Pagan Portugal. There is a mysterious circle in Portugal from the Bronze Age that some believe was used as a teleportation portal, or a Stargate. The circular structure goes back 4,500 years and was used in ancient ritual ceremonies. The monument is roughly 65 feet in diameter and built entirely out of wood. It aligns perfectly with the rising of the sun in the summer and with the sun's position on the winter solstice. Even more amazing is that this strange circular structure is the first of its kind to be found in Portugal. Antonio Valera, the leader of the excavation, says the mysterious circle was built around the year 2800 BC. That was around the same time that Stonehenge was beginning to take form. There are some who believe Stonehenge was also a mysterious ancient place of great power, something that could be used to communicate with beings from the stars. It's all very strange because it seems like all across Europe, 4,500 years ago, portal-like structures and huge megaliths like ancient observatories were being built at the same time. What ancient alien enthusiasts are asking is, could portals like the one found in Portugal and the stone circle at Stonehenge really have allowed visitors from the stars access to our planet? And if the answer is yes, just how did such technology work? Thanks for watching! Which of these shocking ancient mysteries did you find the most fascinating? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!